Well, then in that case, I'll get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to an Immigrant Services Calgary employment event. My name is Carla Ning. I'm a newcomer employment specialist at Immigrant Services Calgary, and I will be your event organizer. I just wanted to, first of all, quickly thank everyone for joining us and remind you to please turn off your microphones and your cameras as we are being broadcast live. And I also would like to issue a warm welcome to our Facebook audience who is joining us live today. And thank you so much for coming. All right, so today's online event is going to be about cover letters. And we all need to work on improving our cover letters. For many employers, these cover letters are critical to helping them understand a potential applicant when they're hiring. However, often applicants are not sure what a Canadian employer is seeking. So today we're going to have Christine, who is an ISC volunteer coach, who is going to share information about how we can all work to improve our cover letters. Christine, the floor is now yours.
Thanks, Carlin. Hi, everyone, and thanks for being here today. As Carlin mentioned, my name is Christine McKernan, and I am a volunteer employment coach with Immigrant Services Calgary. So thanks everyone for joining me today for 7 simple steps to cover letter success. Now, before we get started, I do just want to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territories of the peoples of the Treaty 7 region in Southern Alberta, which includes the Siksika, the Piikani, the Kainai, the Tsuut'ina, and the Stoney Nakoda First Nations. And the city of Calgary is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. I respect the territories that were made, or the treaties that were made on these territories, and we acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past as we move forward to dedicate ourselves in the spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. Alrighty, so once again, hello and welcome. Thank you everyone for being here today as we go through our 7 simple steps to cover letter success. As Carlin mentioned, I just want to reiterate, we'd ask that you please keep your microphones on mute if you are attending through Zoom today. And if you're on Facebook Live, you don't need to worry about unmuting a mic. And if you do have questions, we just ask that you either jot them down on a piece of paper or you can put them into the chat box throughout the presentation. I will not be monitoring the chat box, but Carlin will have her eye on the chat box throughout the presentation, and we will get to your questions at the end of the presentation. So whatever you feel most comfortable with in terms of putting the question in the chat box or just saving it until the end, don't worry about that. We will get to those questions at the end of the session. So yeah, once again, thanks for being here, and we're looking forward to sharing some tips for cover letters with everyone today. Now, this session today is really for anyone. And as Carlin mentioned, cover letters are really applicable to everyone who is looking for a job. So whether you have done a cover letter before or you're brand new to creating a cover letter, I really hope today that you'll have an opportunity to collect some new tips and takeaways to really improve your cover letter or feel confident in creating a cover letter for your next job application. Alrighty, so to start, I just wanted to take a few minutes and actually talk about what a cover letter actually is. So for those of you, again, who have maybe never written a cover letter before, it's important to know what the overall purpose of a cover letter is. So a cover letter at its core is really a resource to use when we're applying for jobs. So typically a cover letter is used in partnership with a resume. And I'm sure everyone who's applied for a job is quite familiar with creating and using a resume when applying for a job. But a cover letter is another resource to use in partnership with a resume when you're looking to apply for a job of interest. A cover letter is often the first document that an employer sees when you're applying for a job. So it can typically be the first impression that you make to your employer when you're applying for that job. So sometimes the employer will look at the cover letter before they even look at a resume. So it's really important to not only submit a cover letter, but also to spend some time crafting a well-written cover letter so you can make that really good first impression when you're applying for a job. A cover letter lets you introduce yourself to the hiring manager and provide just a brief overview of some of your skills and qualifications. So again, similar to what a resume would do, the cover letter highlights any of those really important skills, knowledge, and qualifications that you have that are particularly relevant to that job that you're applying for. So unlike a resume, typically when we apply for a job, we use typically the same resume for any job that we're applying for. A cover letter is something that we want to tweak or tailor specifically to a job application or a job posting. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and the importance of tailoring your cover letter a little bit further on in the presentation today. But again, it is an important tool to use to really cater your skills and qualifications to that of the job that you're applying for. Alrighty, so on the screen here, you will see an example of kind of what a typical cover letter might look like. So I just want to go through the steps of kind of what each section of the cover letter means, or what parts of the cover letter you need to include before we get into the different tips and suggestions for a successful cover letter. So at the top of your cover letter, of course, you're going to want to put your name and your contact information. So of course, that's always very important because you want the employer to contact you to set up an interview. So you're going to put your name as well as typically your email address and or your phone number. You're also able to put your home address on a cover letter. However, Immigrant Services Calgary typically recommends that you do not put your address on a cover letter because really an email and a phone number is sufficient for an employer to contact you. Then, of course, at the top of our cover letter, we do need to have the employer's name and the employer's contact information. So that's important. So really you're including the information about the company that you're applying to. And then we have our introduction paragraph where we essentially just outline the overall purpose of the cover letter. So pretty straightforward here. It's just introducing yourself and outlining what job you're actually going to be applying for. The body paragraphs in the middle of a cover letter outline some of your skills and qualifications for the job. And like I said before, we do want to tailor this part of the cover letter directly to the job that you're applying for. Near the end of the cover letter, we're going to use the last paragraph to kind of conclude or wrap up the cover letter or summarize what you've included in your cover letter, and then finish off the cover letter with an action statement. So something like, you're looking forward to hearing back from this employer to set up a job interview or to speak further about the job opportunity. So really wanting to make sure it's an action-oriented completion to the cover letter. And then, of course, at the end, we want to just conclude the cover letter with your name and potentially a signature. If you are submitting a cover letter online, which is typically how we're applying for jobs now, you don't need to, print it out and sign it manually. You can just put your name via text. Alrighty, so the age-old question: do I really need a cover letter? I'm sure, like I said, everyone on the line has had experience working on a resume, as we typically, it's really mandatory that we submit a resume when applying for a job. A cover letter, on the other hand, can sometimes be not as mandatory. So we really don't absolutely need one, but I want to show you why a cover letter can really take your application from good to great. So both a resume and a cover letter are used to showcase your skills and qualifications for a job. So in that way, they are very similar. However, in addition to this, a cover letter will really set you apart from other candidates. So when we're applying for jobs, there can typically be hundreds of people applying for the same job. So we really want to make sure that if this is a job that you are really passionate about getting, you want to set yourself apart from other candidates by taking that extra time and spending that extra effort in creating a cover letter and showing your commitment to the job. A cover letter also allows you to go in depth about specific experiences that are relevant to the job. So again, while that resume is typically fairly consistent depending on what job you apply for, the cover letter actually lets you go into a little bit more detail about why you'd be the best fit for that job. A cover letter also explains your experiences in a story-like format. So it can be a lot nicer for an employer to read through a cover letter as opposed to just reviewing a resume on its own. Again, the cover letter also shows the employer your commitment to the role. So like I said before, it kind of sets you apart and shows that you are really interested in spending that extra time to show your interest in the position. And finally, a cover letter can also provide a sample of your written communication. So in any job, we do need to communicate in one way, shape, or form. So either verbally or through written format. So a cover letter gives you an opportunity to showcase those written skills and how to communicate properly. So as you can see here again, even though a cover letter is not always mandatory, I really do think that there are a lot of pros to creating a cover letter and submitting a cover letter with your resume when you're applying for jobs. Okay, so with that, I do want to jump into our 7 simple steps for cover letter success. So starting off with step number 1, an important step when writing a cover letter is to, of course, address that cover letter correctly. So when you're applying for a job, it is important to include as many details about the company as possible when you're addressing your cover letter. So essentially, when you're applying for that job, making sure that you are writing the correct company name down, the correct address for where you would be working, as well as the hiring manager's name and their role. Additionally to that, if you are applying to a company that has a lot of job openings, I would recommend that you include the name of the job title or the competition number, just to make it very clear what position you are applying for when you're writing your cover letter. Alrighty, so we have Cartoon Christine here, and she's going to be helping out throughout the presentation with some tips and suggestions after each step of the cover letter. So my tip for addressing the cover letter correctly is, if possible, use the actual name of the hiring manager to add a personal touch to your cover letter. So for example, when we're starting a cover letter and creating the introduction here, if you can do a little bit of digging into the company and find out what the actual name of the hiring manager is, it really again shows that you've spent a little bit of extra time to determine who that manager would be and who you'd be interviewing with. And again, it adds that personal touch when you can provide a specific name on that cover letter. Now, I recognize that this is not always possible. So if you do just have to address it to, the hiring manager or the human resources manager, that's okay. But when possible, it's always nice to personalize that cover letter by addressing the specific person when you are addressing the letter. Alrighty, step number 2 is to keep it short. Now, I know everyone has probably a ton of skills, a ton of qualifications, and amazing educational backgrounds that they want to showcase in their cover letters. However, it is important that we keep the cover letter short and concise. So again, remembering that there are probably a lot of people applying for these jobs, you do just want to make sure that you capture the attention of the hiring manager, but then also make sure that you don't lose the hiring manager's attention by rambling on too long when you're writing your cover letter. So as it says on the screen here, your cover letter should consist of usually 2 to 3 body paragraphs. Again, and those body paragraphs are where you're outlining your skills and qualifications. But really, the cover letter should not exceed 1 page. So you really want to make sure that that entire cover letter fits in 1 page so that you can capture all of that information and you're not losing the attention of the hiring manager as they review that cover letter of yours. So my little tip here when kind of drafting up your 1-page cover letter is to use a template like the ones I'm showing on the screen to really help keep your cover letter on track. So it can be easy to, start adding too much information and all of a sudden your cover letter is 2 or 3 pages long. But to keep on track with that 1-page template or that 1-page format, I recommend that you use a template like this to make sure that you stay on track with the information that's really necessary for that 1 page. So the cover letter outline that I've got on the screen here, this is a resource available through the University of Alberta Career Center. So there's a link on the site, or sorry, on the screen right now for to access this resource. But Carlin also will be sharing these resources out with any participant who has registered on the event invitation. And so you will get all these resources and you can, check them out after the session, of course, as well. So again, this outline is a really nice one just to showcase how to organize your cover letter. And then the back document there that's kind of covered, that document is just a nice little checklist to help you review your cover letter when it's completed. Alrighty, step number 3 is to stay consistent. So what I mean by this is that, like I mentioned before, your resume and your cover letter are typically kind of a package deal. So when you're applying for a job, you typically aren't going to submit a cover letter on its own. It's going to accompany your resume, and those two documents will be submitted together. So because that's the case, we want to make sure that the resume and the cover letter have a similar look and feel to them. So you want to make sure that your font style, your font size, your margins, all of those things are the same when you look at your resume and your cover letter. So that way, when the hiring manager reviews those two documents, it's very easy to see that those two documents belong together and that they're not kind of two mismatched type of documents. So I'm going to show you an example of what that looks like on the next slide. Alrighty, so Cartoon Christine asks, which cover letter is a better match with this resume? So as you can see on the left, we have an example of the first page of a resume. You can see the font size, you can see the font style, you can check out the margins, so the distance between the wording and the side of the paper. And then look at it in contrast with the cover letter on the right side. So as you can see, the font on the cover letter is different from that of the resume. The font's also a little bit bigger than the font in the resume. And you can see the margins here that there's a little bit more gap, or there's a little bit less of a gap between the page size and the font. So not exactly a perfect match with the resume. So we could do some things to make it look a little bit cleaner and a little bit more put together. So I'm going to progress the slide here and I'm going to show you a different version of a cover letter that might be a nicer fit. So in this cover letter, we've used the exact same font. We've used the same font style, the same font size, and also our margins on the side are the same and consistent with the resume. So I would say that the cover letter I'm showing right now, it just looks a little bit cleaner and nicer when paired with the resume, because that look and that feel of the cover letter and the resume are quite consistent. So I'm just going to go back again to that first cover letter example, and then the second one. So this is something really quick and easy that you can do when you complete your cover letter to make it look just a little bit cleaner and sharper. Alrighty. Step 4 for our successful cover letters is to use keywords. So when you're looking at a job posting, typically there will be some keywords highlighted or outlined in the job description that you might want to use in your cover letter. So what I recommend is using those exact words from the job posting in your cover letter. Now, just to clarify, we don't want to be plagiarizing, so you don't want to be posting or copying and pasting a full paragraph from the job description into your cover letter, but really just teasing out those important keywords and using those specific ones in your cover letter to really draw the attention of the hiring manager. Now, for some jobs, not always, but for some jobs, there are computer systems that actually screen and review cover letters and resumes before they actually go to the interview process. So for companies that get hundreds and maybe thousands of job applications, a computer is actually what is going to be reviewing that cover letter before a human actually does. So if that's the case, we want to make sure that we're using the correct wording so that the computer can detect those keywords in your cover letter and flag that, yes, you would be a good match for this job. So you don't want to miss out on a human review or an interview because you're not using the correct terminology or vocabulary in your cover letter. So again, really important to use the exact words from the job description and use those in your cover letter to show an example of how you have shown those skills that the hiring manager is looking for. All right, so we're going to do a little activity now. On the screen here, I've got an example of a job posting that I pulled from Indeed. And this is an actual job posting that was recently posted in Calgary. Now I'm going to give you a couple minutes here, and I want you to review this job description, and I want you to find some of the keywords in this job posting that we could use in our cover letter. So I'll give you a few minutes here. Again, we're just going to stay on mute on our mics. So you can either jot the words down, the keywords down if you'd like, or just think about them. Or if you'd like, you can also put them in the chat box as well. So just reviewing any of those keywords that you think would be good words to use in a cover letter. And I'll give you 2 or 3 minutes right now to do that. Okay, I'll give you 1 more minute here just to, again, flag any of those keywords. And then I will go through some of the words that I flagged as kind of keywords to include in a cover letter. So there's definitely more than 1 word. And feel free to put them in the chat box if you have an idea of what some of those keywords might be. Okay, so I'm not checking the chat box, but I see there are some messages in there. So if you did put some words in, then thank you for that. All right, so I'm going to pop up what I kind of thought were some keywords for this job posting. So what I thought were some keywords were at the beginning paragraph or the first paragraph of this job description. It kind of gives an overview of what the job is. So it says that they are on the lookout for young and ambitious talent. So I thought ambitious might be a good word that we would want to include in our cover letter. It also says those who are willing to go beyond the norm to increase the level of service and value. So I thought willing to go above the norm, that might be a good term to also use in the cover letter. There are some other things as well, again, that you could include. This is just these are a few that I flagged, but if you think, increased level of service and value we provide to clients, those would also potentially be some good words to use in the cover letter as well. And then down here where the job description actually goes through some of the qualifications and responsibilities, there were lots of keywords here that I think we could use in a cover letter. So things like great attitude, willingness to learn and grow, time management, excellent penmanship, self-driven or motivated. I think those were all really good terms that are used in the cover letter, in the job description that we could incorporate in the cover letter to really make sure that that cover letter aligns nicely with the job description. So for example, with this excellent penmanship, essentially what this means is that you have strong written communication skills. So rather than saying, I have strong written communication skills in my cover letter, I'm going to say I have excellent penmanship. I want to use that term penmanship because that's the term that was used in the job description. So I want to show you an example of how I'd actually incorporate some of these words into a few statements in my cover letter, into the body of my cover letter. So I'll pull up how I actually pulled some of these examples into a few sentences that I would use in my cover letter. So what I wrote was, I have a great attitude and I am willing to go beyond the norm. This can be seen in my previous work experience at ABC Dental Office, where I volunteered as the office safety coordinator to ensure all health and safety protocols were up to code. I demonstrated excellent penmanship by completing frequent written safety reports for management to review and file. So as you can see here, I've used 3 different terms that were used in the cover letter in just one of, or in the job description, in just one of my kind of statements in my cover letter. So not only did I highlight some of those skills or qualifications that I have, but I also gave an example of how I've applied those skills and then kind of what the end output was. So the fact that I did multiple reports for management and I reviewed and filed those as well. So showcasing those tangible or those desirable skills from the job application, and then how I actually incorporated them, or how I've demonstrated them in the past in previous work experience. All right, so we'll move on to step number 5 now for a successful cover letter. Step number 5 is to tailor the cover letter to the job. So again, like I mentioned earlier in the presentation, typically the same resume can be used for a wide range of jobs. So it's kind of nice once you have your resume really up to par and you've got all of your work experience and employment and educational experience and volunteer experience up to date on your resume. It's nice because you can really use that resume for a lot of the different jobs that you apply for. However, with the cover letter, like I mentioned before, we do want to make sure that it's really specific to the job that we're applying for. And what this means is that, again, you're going to need to spend a bit of time tailoring that cover letter to the specific job, as I mentioned before, by using some of the keywords in the job description, but also showing how and why you would be the best fit for that employer's needs. So it will take a little bit more time to do your cover letter in addition to just submitting a resume. So Cartoon Christine's tip for this one is really just a reminder to not leave your application to the last minute, because crafting a tailored cover letter, it does take time. So again, I think you need to sometimes consider, if you're applying for a job that you really think you'd be a great fit for and you really do want to get that job and be successful in landing an interview, just making sure that you're spending a bit of extra time to tailor that cover letter and not just using a generic cover letter that you would give to any job. And again, that really will set you apart from other applicants. So it's worth it to take the time if you're interested in that job and do think you'll have a competitive shot at an interview. But just a reminder that you don't want to leave it till 10 o'clock at night when the job posting closes at midnight. It will take some time to craft up a good cover letter and really, again, showcase the skills that are relevant to the job. So again, here's just another example of a cover letter. And as you can see in that second body paragraph, where the lines, or the 2 lines that I've just highlighted in red, again, in that body paragraphs, those are really where you're responding directly to the job description. And you, again, where it says here, you are literally using words and phrases from the job description. So you can't just use the same cover letter for every single job you apply for. You do need to use the cover letter to directly respond to the job description and the job that you're applying for. Okay, on to step number 6 already. Step number 6 is to sell yourself. So I know that it can be sometimes, especially in Canadian culture, we don't like to brag. I think people like to be modest about their skills and their strengths. But really, when we're applying for a job, this is not the place to be modest and not the place to be shy. When you're writing your cover letter, this really is an opportunity to brag about your accomplishments and really show an employer why you would be a great fit for the job and what a great hire you'd be. So, boost that confidence. Think about all of those previous experiences that you've had that would make you a great fit for the job, and use your cover letter to showcase that and to brag about some of those accomplishments. because, for an employer, they haven't met you yet. They don't know what you can bring to the table. So the cover letter, again, is that resource for you to showcase all the skills and all of the amazing qualifications that you bring and why those would be such a great fit for the job that you're applying for. So I want to give you an example of a couple different statements we could use in a cover letter. And I want to show you how, the first example that I've got on the board here, this is something maybe you would typically see in a cover letter. You've written, I have strong interpersonal and communication skills. So I'm kind of just writing a couple skills that I have, but really I do think I'm selling myself a little bit short here. I think I could build on this a lot more and really showcase how I've demonstrated strong interpersonal and communication skills and why I would be such an awesome fit for this company and this job that I've applied for. So I'd say instead of using the term on the top, that short little statement, try something like this at the bottom. So I've written, I've developed strong interpersonal and communication skills by participating in case competitions. So in this example, I'm giving a specific point in time and a specific example of how I've demonstrated strong interpersonal and communication skills. So then it says, I've worked with a partner to analyze problems facing an organization and developed recommendations. We presented our solutions with the use of visual aids and a PowerPoint presentation. So again, compared to the statement on the top, the bottom statement really goes into a bit more detail about how I've applied those skills and what the end solution was or the end product was. So the fact that I not only did I analyze some problems, but then I utilized those strong interpersonal and communication skills by presenting solutions back using things like visual aids and a PowerPoint presentation. So this just goes that extra step to not only showcase the skills that I have, but how I've used them in the past and how I could use those skills and those examples or that experience in the job setting moving forward. Okay, and we're already at step 7. So step 7 for those 7 simple steps to cover letter success, of course, would be to proofread. So I can't reiterate this enough, the importance of proofreading your cover letter before you submit it. So when you're writing your cover letter, I know sometimes it can feel like you're dragging on and it takes forever to craft up a good cover letter, but just think about putting all that effort in and then submitting a cover letter with a spelling mistake and how that could really just, ruin all the work that you've done just in a snap. So it's really important to read your cover letter once you've completed it and then read it over again. So what I recommend is complete the cover letter, give it a read through, and then let it sit for a little bit and come back to it. So whether that be, go out for a walk, go have a meal, or even, go to bed for the night and the next morning, revisit that cover letter with fresh eyes. And I find often you'll find that there are some little tweaks you could make to the cover letter just to make it that much better. I also recommend having a friend or a family member review the cover letter. I know for myself, sometimes when I look at something for so long, it's easy to just not even notice some little mistakes that I've made. So it's sometimes nice to have, again, that fresh set of eyes or somebody else reviewing my cover letter so that they can, let me know, Christine, the wording of this doesn't seem great, or I think you've misspelled this word, or maybe this isn't what you mean. So that can be really helpful as well to have a friend or a family member review my cover letter. And of course, don't just rely on spell check, because there are times where, you could spell a word properly, but it might not be the word that you meant to spell. And so it might not get detected on spell check, but it could still be an error. And of course, like I said, we never want to let a silly typo prevent you from getting an interview. So like I said before, you're going to be spending quite a bit of time and effort on crafting that proper cover letter. So you'd hate to ruin your opportunity for a job interview if you just make a spelling error or two and the hiring manager reads that and isn't impressed, even though the rest of your cover letter is great. So really important to review that cover letter and proofread it before you hit send and submit your application. So I've got another activity for us on this next slide here. And And I'm going to give everyone another few minutes to review the start of this cover letter that I've drafted. I want you to double check this sample cover letter and detect the errors in the cover letter. So again, this is just the starting of my cover letter. All it is the first statement. So please just take a few minutes now, read through it and see if you can detect some of the errors that are probably pretty easy to miss. So I'll give you a couple minutes here.
And yeah, don't be shy, guys. Go ahead and post ideas in the chat box. We're not quite ready for questions yet, but you can go ahead and post responses. And we are getting some nice little responses. Okay. So I don't want to quite give it away. I want to give everyone a chance to participate who wants to. And this is always good fun.
I'll give you a hint here. There are 5 errors on this cover letter.
Oh, okay. Yes. For those of you ambitious, don't forget to read the end.
So I'm not looking at the chat box, but I see there's been a few messages popping up.
Yeah, there has been. Okay, well, you know what? I'll give another 10 seconds.
Okay. And then we'll...
Yeah, that's good. All right, yes, let's go ahead and see what they are.
Okay, so I'm looking at, first of all, our date. So November 17th is today's date, but it's actually 2021. So this is actually a really common mistake to make. Typically, you're using the same heading for a cover letter, and that might include the date. So, you know, you've updated your body paragraphs, you've tailored that cover letter to the job description, but we forgot to update the date. So make sure you remember to do that. And again, that's something that spell check will not flag. The next one is, Mr. Smith. So as you can see, when I address the cover letter at the top, John Smith is spelled with a Y. However, when I addressed him in the cover letter, I wrote, Dear Mr. Smith with an I. So this is a huge one that, you know, it's easy to potentially misspell a hiring manager's name, but obviously when John Smith reads this, he's going to know that you spelled his name wrong. So really just double checking that the spelling of the company name and the hiring manager is correct. The third little mistake here is the previously. So if we read this sentence, it says, my previously experience. So obviously that doesn't read right. We would just want to say my previous experience. So again, something that spell check wouldn't pick up on. I've spelt the word previously correct, but grammatically that doesn't make sense. The next one is administrative assistant. So again, that would be an administrative assistant. So just a little, you know, missed one letter there, but if an employer is reading that, they might catch that and might turn them off a little bit. And then our last one is an exceptional fit for this role. So we're not talking about a cinnamon roll, we're talking about a job. So again, just, you know, use the wrong spelling of role there. So just a little thing that again wouldn't be detected on spell check, but if I am reading it again, or if a friend or a family reviewed it, hopefully they would catch that little error. Alrighty. So again, spelling, grammar, using the correct date, and then correct spelling of the company name and the hiring manager are all kind of those important things that might fall through the cracks a little bit that you might just want to double check. Alrighty, so we made it through our 7 simple steps. Just to recap here before we wrap, those 7 simple steps to cover letter success are, number 1, to address it correctly. So use the correct hiring manager name and the correct company name. Number 2, keep it short. So make sure you keep it to 1-page maximum. Number 3, stay consistent. So the look and feel of your cover letter and resume should be consistent. Step number 4 is to use the keywords that are included in the job description. Number 5, tailor it to the job. So spend some time reviewing the job description and the company values and making sure that you're really highlighting examples that are specific to that job. Number 6, sell yourself. So don't be modest. Make sure you're really showcasing all of those skills and qualifications that you have. And then finally, number 7, of course, proofread. Alrighty, so like I mentioned, I do have a few references that I've relied on for this presentation today, as well as a couple resources from the University of Alberta and the University of Calgary. So these are nice resources for, again, that template for a cover letter, as well as some nice examples of cover letters that you could build off of. So we will share those resources out. I think Carlin's going to circulate them to all the attendees who've registered. So you can definitely look at those and spend a bit of time if you want some additional resources after this presentation. And with that, I want to thank you all for attending today. I hope this was useful and happy to answer any questions at this time.
Okay, well, guys, I just wanted to thank you so much for attending our presentation. I'm just going to take over the screen sharing, and we would like to humbly thank our program funder, IRCC, for making this presentation possible. So with that ado, I would like to thank the Facebook audience for joining us live today and ask that we will just say goodbye to them now. So bye-bye, Facebook audience.